Stay tuned now for the Racing for Heroes radio show with host Brett Morash on 1460 WVOX.
All right, Racing for Heroes fans, we are back here at WVOX, 1460 AM worldwide at WVOX.com and live on Facebook. And it is January 14th. As we go into the new year, we're looking toward what new exciting things are happening. We have two guests today. Our first guest is from Canada. He served in the Canadian Army, and his name is Ian Bradbury. He's been on the show before. Today he's going to be talking about a few things going on. But I think in order to have, anytime Ian's on, I think we have to play Canadian National Anthem. So hit it. All right, Ian, we're not going to play the whole thing. It's not a hockey game.
Hey, good morning, Brett.
How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing fantastic this morning. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, listen, I think every time we have you back, I think we have to play O Canada. I think what we'll do is we'll play different parts of it over time.
I am totally fine with that.
So let's jump right into what you've been doing. So, first, just to refresh everyone, you have the dubious distinction of destroying an MTU diesel by sucking the air box into it. So how did that happen again? Let's just recap.
Well, that was back on Roto 8 in the former Yugoslavia, way back in 2001. It was in an AVGP heading up the side of one of the fantastic local mountains there, and we were having a little bit of a hard time getting up, and the crew chief told me to punch it, and I did. And next thing you know, it sounded like a rocket had hit us. The air filter got sucked in clean through the engine, and that was the end of that. And we were stuck on the side of the mountain with the AVGP.
I know. Did they ever fix that Grizzly?
Yeah. You know what? Myself and the other driver of the vehicle then spent the next week pulling the engine out and sticking a new one in. It was a pretty interesting experience for sure.
See, not many people can say that they've destroyed a diesel. I mean, they're usually pretty robust, but not if you get hard things into the pistons. But
that's it. You get it wind up and you give it a good punch on that gas pedal, and you can do a whole bunch of interesting things.
No, the supercharger will really trash it. I mean, it's no joke. So anyway, but you've actually made a little bit of a living doing kind of peacekeeping operations post-military, and I think that first we kind of talk about checking in on like what's going on with COVID-19. We've had some other folks on like Glenn Knott up in the Maritimes talking about dirt track racing. So what's going on with COVID up in Canada?
COVID's been a really interesting go for Canada, particularly because we don't really have a single federal policy. It's been split up based on provincial authority.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some of the longest running and most authoritarian measures in the world. There's actually a couple different websites that track the different measures and programs that have been put in place around the world, and Canada's consistently hitting in the top 5. We've had vax passports in most provinces now for 6 months plus, and we're right now sitting on some pretty heavy restrictions as Omicron has made its way through Canadian society, and we've seen a lot of breakthroughs. We've seen some pretty heavy impacts on the medical system. Now, part of that is due to some of the mandates related to mandatory vaccination status, whereby we laid off quite a few healthcare workers from coast to coast. And shortly thereafter, we had the Omicron wave that showed a lot of breakthroughs. So now we're suffering a little bit of service delivery issues and capacity issues from that.
Yeah, and I think you told me the other day on the phone that they're actually fining people with a pretty hefty fine for not getting vaccinated.
Well, in fact, Quebec, the province of Quebec had announced that they were implementing a program such as that, and they were quite stringent on the fact that they were going forward with this. Now, we saw just yesterday, it appears that the Quebec government is backtracking on that now. Pretty sure that in Canada, it's quite illegal to fine somebody based on their medical choice.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see them backing down from some of that stuff. It's quite a slippery slope once it gets going.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's look at like what is going on with like major venues and stuff like that. And I'm hoping that they open up the racing again
Wow.
up in the Maritime. So what's going on with like venues?
So it's been off and on. Back last summer when they implemented the Vax program, everything pretty much opened up at that point in time, whereby if you had a Vax pass, you could enter. Throughout the fall months and the autumn, we saw that a lot of the outbreaks were centered at these venues, hockey stadiums, concert sites, restaurants, and indoor dining areas. So that's all been scaled back again now, and a lot of those venues are closed. So even those that do have the Vax passes just simply can't access the venue's not open. So we're hoping to see later this month a little bit of easing on that, probably a return to a green pass system. I know British Columbia has just announced that they've advanced their green pass now to include a booster dose, so you have to have 3 shots in order to get that Vax pass. So it's all pretty piecemeal from coast to coast, depending on which province you're looking at. Some have extremely strict restrictions and everything's closed down. Others a little bit less. So I think down in the Maritimes, where you guys are looking at doing some dirt tracking, you guys might be on close for an extra while yet.
Yeah, because we were talking with, well, first of all, Glenn's starting Racing for Heroes Canada. And I think last time I saw it was like I had a flag with a beaver, but I don't think that's what they're going to go with. But although I think it's amazing. But trying to do the cross border travel is still a problem, right? Like you can't just go from Canada to the US and vice versa, or is that opened up?
Well, there's actually a lot of movement on that just in the past couple of days. Canada is raising some new measures to cross the border from the United States. I know that that's going to be significantly impacting a lot of people within the supply sector and logistics sector, particularly the movement of goods and transport trucks and things like that. I think when it comes to individuals looking to transit over, for the most part, it is essential travel that they give you approval for. And you do have to have, it's a new Canada entry thing that our border services has put into place. So you have to have this a particular app on your cell phone. It has to contain all your vaccination data. You have to have that pre-approval, and then when you show up, they scan that then. So, it's getting more restrictive in some areas, less restrictive in other areas, and depending on what your individual status is regarding vaccination, it might be easier than some other things.
Well, I mean, you're seeing that with Djokovic, with the tennis down in Australia. I mean, everywhere is so challenging and problematic.
Absolutely. Well, I just saw that the NCAA down in the States is now recognizing prior infection for 90 days out as equivalent to vaccination. So I think we're seeing a lot of fluidity in what's accepted, what's not, what's considered okay, what isn't, and what will allow you access.
For
but
sure.
If you look at the European system, since day one has been recognizing prior infection. I know that caused a lot of debate over this side, both in the United States and in Canada, as to whether or not we'd recognize that. And I know some European states now have kind of backed off on it. Others have just joined in on it now, recognizing that. So I think probably over the next 12 months, we're going to see quite a bit of fluidity in that. And I'd say that we're likely here on this side to start seeing some more open recognition of prior infection, particularly seen as an Omicron that's just going through, it's going through the population and causing a lot of breakthrough cases, even for those who are vaccinated. So I think that we'll see a lot of fluidity. Going
for
forward.
sure. So let's shift gears here. I know one of the things that you focus on, in your professional life is extremism on really both sides of the spectrum. Anything interesting coming on in the coming days or months?
Absolutely. Actually, when I look at extremism, my team is really focused on what we call a full spectrum approach to countering extremism. So that really takes it out of like a left-right binary and looks at it as a phenomena of extremism as it exists. And that does help reduce some of the biases that exist in analysis and reporting on that. What we've been seeing here recently, particularly in the U.S., is a pretty heavy effort to redefine a manifestation that's called accelerationism. We've been seeing some efforts to kind of shift it away from its traditional definitions and its traditional theories, and moving it to reference something that's new, that's American, and predominantly of the American right wing. This is a very dangerous movement, as that type of shifting actually feeds into the goals of accelerationists, who generally would like to see the collapse of Western capitalism and see it replaced by something more socialist,
like post-Marxist kind of thing.
Yeah, it's quite complex. There's a lot of different theories that align with it. There's also a lot of different tactics, and those tactics can be adopted by different groups. And I think that's where maybe some of the American researchers are getting confused right now. Is they're seeing some of the far right groups adopt the tactics used by the traditional accelerationist movement, and they're mistaking that as being core values rather than just adoption of tactics. So that one's really interesting. That's definitely one to keep an eye on, because the accelerationist movement and those who actually really are pushing that ideology, our adversaries are taking great advantage of that. China's been doing it in their information operations now for years, as has Russia. And now with this new mix coming from the domestic side, it's really confusing the information environment. So my suggestion to everybody would be to kind of take a step back if this is something you're looking at, and really start considering extremism as a phenomenon. And if you're narrowly focused on a particular brand of extremism, be it far left, far right, anarcho, any of the jihadi movements or something, it'd probably be a very good idea to advance your knowledge in some of the other ones. And one thing that I always tell new analysts and new researchers is it's probably a good idea to look at your own personal interest groups, identify one or two within there, and kind of do a deep dive to see if there's any connections to extremism within your own groups, because that's going to help to challenge your biases and help you actually look at it as a phenomena rather than, something of a specific group.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. And Ian, we're going to post this online afterward on LinkedIn. In particular, I know you're very active there. Maybe you can put a little bit more online a little later today when I get it posted up.
Fantastic. I'll make some comments and share some documents over.
For sure. Listen, last minute until our next guest, could you let everyone know if they're interested in your work, where they can find you and what website?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with the first NAEF. It's www.1naef.org. That website does need a little bit of updating here now for the new year, but they can find it there. They can find it on Twitter and LinkedIn as well under First NAEF pages.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ian. Glad to have you here, and hopefully, things will clear up there, and you guys will get a little more ability to move around up in the Canada. So thanks so much.
Fingers crossed. I'm really hoping to get down to that racetrack with you guys soon.
You bet, brother. All right, talk to you soon. All right, everyone. That was Ian Bradbury, formerly of the Canadian Army, just a great all-around human and out there making a difference in the real world. Speaking about making a difference in the real world, we have our very own Ilana Duffy, U.S. Army veteran, on, and founder and CEO of Pathfinder. Ilana, how are you doing?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you back on. You've been such a good friend of Racing for Heroes over the past couple of years, and just, great woman about town. And, one of the, as you know, the reason I got back to you this past week was I was so impressed. You're going to the South Pole.
Yeah, because it's not going to be cold enough in New York this weekend. I figured may as well take on a continent that is a glacier. So
you don't get the ribbon anymore if you're not on active duty. You know that, right?
That is, and would you? Well, I would say, would you believe? But I know that you would. That I had actually put in. On several occasions, I did put in for the Antarctica mission because I was counterintelligence, and there is a counterintelligence mission. Never got selected. They were like, no, you're not going to be one of those like two people. I'm sure they were like warrant officers and commission officers
Right.
and whatever.
So
And I was like, I'm an E4 and I want to go to Antarctica.
well, and first of all, it's an awesome thing. And, you know, the Navy, because the Navy, as you probably know, used to kind of run the base there. And it up until like 95. And it used to be like a job that you could do in the Navy. It was like a 1-year tour. But it was considered like a get well tour. Like, so if you were like terrible at your job, you could go to Antarctica for a year and get a check on the block and you'd help recover. But they stopped it like right around the time I was a division officer. So I always like, hey, how bad can it be? Of course, I always think of Stripes when at the very end of Stripes when they send the guy to Ice Station Zebra.
Yeah.
They send the captain, John Larroquette's character. Good stuff. But you're not going to have the EM-50 urban assault vehicle. You're actually like humping it down there, but you actually have a challenge in as much as you have a prosthetic leg. And I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, there's a titanium rod that is inserted into your bone that goes out the bottom of your leg. And I would think that would make it relatively cold. So you can't walk around like with a peg leg. So what are they doing?
Right. Yeah. I can't completely like pirate the whole thing. So actually the VA is being, I think that they are more enthusiastic about this whole project than I am, because they get to play with all of their problem solving, and they're like, oh, something to play with, like super jazzed about it. But no, I do have osseointegration, which is, I have a titanium rod that is inserted directly into the tibia, and it sticks out about 2 inches below the amputation, where the amputation was. And then I hook on essentially attachments. I'm kind of like, like a KitchenAid mixer.
Put a blender on there.
On the leg. Yeah, like make some bread while we're down there. I don't know.
The Navy's you have a big flipper if you were gonna go swimming. It'd be incredible.
Right? Yeah. So this is how I tell my nephews that I'm gonna like show up next time with a jetpack. But except that now they're definitely counting on it. So
that's amazing.
So I'm
you can put a bottle rocket on it. You got to go over the border into Pennsylvania and get some of those cheap fireworks.
Yeah,
it'd be perfect.
Yeah, just like hook up something. But so we're looking at stuff. I mean, like there is like plumber's tape, or like that they would put on, that you put on pipes to keep them from freezing and stuff like that. Because there's some low tech options. I know that one of the heads of the prosthetics team is trying to see if there's like a battery powered like option to keep it warm, to keep it above freezing. Because even though titanium is not a great conductor, it does get pretty achy, especially in the cold. And that's at like 30 degrees. Now wind chill down towards the pole is like -40. So,
and that's during the summer, right? The time you'll be there. I mean,
yeah. So it's I'm super looking forward to this.
So can you? So you must feel it now, though, right? Because like I have a broken bone in my foot still, and like every once in a while, like if the weather's changing quickly, like I'll feel it. But I'm sure you feel everything. I mean, just because of the way it is.
Yeah, and they did this great benefit where they reconnected all the nerves. So I feel a lot.
It's good, bad, right?
Yeah. They were like, oh, that's super cool because now you don't get like phantom pains and stuff like that. And which, yes, it's great.
However.
go score one for technology and medicine, but it also means that it hurts in sometimes when it's like tomorrow it's supposed to be like 15 degrees or something in New York City, and I'm going to be feeling it. So
yeah.
So it's
and you can't just throw a regular boot on, right? Because like your prosthetic is kind of fixed, right? It doesn't articulate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so they're modifying the boot. The team that I'm going with, which is both a couple of a few veterans and a British explorer who has a charity that looks at global conservation and particularly Antarctica conservation. So we are, they sent me the boots early, about a year early, so that I can drop them off, because we quickly found that if I can even get the foot in there, I can't get it back out. So because the ankle doesn't move. And the boots are so rigid that you can't get them back out. So so they're modifying the boot a little bit to be able to, because they're going to basically put a foot in there, but there's a mechanism kind of like on a bike wheel to remove a bike wheel. Like it's a lever and a pin.
Oh, okay.
So to be able to access the lever piece, I need a little bit more room in the boot. So so there's some, and between that and you know, I mean, talking to car people with all the different temperatures and separation of and different types of materials that are used. I mean, the cold point and the expansion and contraction rates are different for the different types of metal that are used in the prosthetic. So so we're like they already moved it to a fiberglass foot instead of carbon fiber and yeah. So
oh wow.
So it's you know, I mean, I'm pretty lucky that I'm not like, you know, a early explorer. I'm going to go on a wooden.
You're not with Shackleton.
Yeah, hanging out with Shackleton and my wooden peg.
Although that wouldn't have transferred the heat. Maybe they had something going. Use teak wood.
Right? Yeah.
Wait, listen, we only got about 2 minutes left. But wait, we got about 2 minutes left.
Put some resin on it.
All right, I got a check fire there, Sergeant. Hey, listen, so I knew I'd get a laugh out of that. But hey, listen, so real quick on the tour. So it's in December. You're going to fly to South America and then onward movement, right? So how does that go?
Yeah, so we fly to where are we going? Punta Arenas, I think, in Chile. In Chile.
Yeah.
And then from there we go. We actually skip most of the coast and we go a little bit inland to the base camp of Mount Vinson, which is the tallest point in Antarctica. Which, given that I've climbed a couple of mountains, everybody's like, "Oh, aren't you? Why aren't you just climbing Vinson while you're there?"
Isn't it like a cartoon like Mary from Denali or something like that, or something like that? You're gonna be a cartoon character, or at least a Barbie, like awesome Barbie.
Oh yeah. I am. I feel like I am a cartoon character most days. So yeah, and then so we have a couple of days there to kind of to group up, and then they fly us to the 89th parallel, where they drop us off, and we cross country ski from the 89th to the South Pole. So
how many days is that part of the voyage journey? Excuse me.
The trek, we're going to do it in like 8 to 10. They said that the folks who have done this before are like, yeah, like trying to do it in like 6 to 8 days is pushing it too hard.
Wow.
So we'll do it in like 8 to 10. Because there's pressure changes and
crevasses.
Like, I mean, the cold too.
There's things you can die. I mean, you can like legitimately die near the South Pole. This is not an easy thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you
Yeah.
end up at it's not McMurdo base, I forgot, is it Shackleton is the US base of at South Pole?
Yeah.
The one that kind of it walks now. It lifts itself
Yeah.
up and it kind of walks. It's pretty slick how it's set up.
Which is super rad. Yeah.
I mean, it's not as cool as your leg thing, but like, listen, if they can figure out how to make a base walk, I'm sure the VA can figure out how to help your boot. Or at least they should talk to like the Nike Air guy, the one with remember like the little basketball pump on the tongue. Maybe they could just fill it with air and I mean, my kids go to school with like those thermoses and it's still hot. I mean, there's got to be some technology out there.
There's
I don't want to. I listen.
I also have a thermos that stays hot.
I'm going to use this as a copyright opportunity here. That if it does, in fact, they have to use the thermos model, like you heard it here first on Racing for Heroes Radio. All right, and listen. It is the last 30 seconds of the show, so listen. Thank you for being on. You're always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll check in again with you before you're off to places other.
Yes, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
All right, my friend. All right, everyone. Well, that's it for Racing Heroes Radio today. As we go off into next week. Next week, we're going to be having some great guests, and so please tune in, and we'll let you go with a little further down the road by the real Doug Lane. Thanks so much, everyone.